is up, everybody? Say hello to my two newest friends. They're looking pretty good. Today, I'm going to be showing you how I set up remote control of the brightness on my LED grow light. So I'm using a quantum board here, but you can use any LED grow light that is powerable by Meanwell driver. And I am using the HLG 120H54B, but the important thing is the B here. B means it is dimmable with these dimmer wires. So that's how we're going to be controlling the brightness over those dimmer wires, and I will go in more detail on the circuit. But they only allow you to dim down to 10%, and if we want to be able to turn it all the way off, which is very important, we will also be communicating with this smart switch. What I have here is a TP-Link, but really almost any smart switch will work. So we will be using Home Assistant, running a MQTT server to send messages to this little NodeMCU. That NodeMCU will receive the messages for brightness and will basically send a PWM signal to these pins. So I'm going to pop over to my desk and show you the circuit on a breadboard. Okay, so we're here with the breadboard and a schematic drawing. I'll quickly cover what we got here in the schematic. This is the NodeMCU. We just have two pins coming out of it. The digital output, I'm using D0 here, and the ground pin. And then on the Meanwell side, the two pins, dim plus, dim minus, are what we'll be using. And then these are the two components. So you can see it's really simple. The digital out goes through a resistor into the transistor base. So I should probably label that here. So this is transistor base. I'm using a roughly 3K transistor, but the size really doesn't matter. Anywhere close to that should be fine. The ground of the NodeMCU is connected to the emitter side, and then the other side is the collector. So this is how you need to wire up your circuit. I have it here on a breadboard. We got ground here connected to the emitter. I have these leads right here, which are showing where we would be connected to the Meanwell. And then we have the signal coming out here through this resistor into the base of that transistor. And I'm using a PN2222A, and I will share a link to that. So we will jump into the onto my computer and see the code side of things. We will need a Home Assistant instance. I'm not going to go into much detail here because there's a ton of great resources, but you can go to home-assistant.io if you don't have a Home Assistant running, and they will walk you through how to do it. Once you have Home Assistant running, inside of your Home Assistant instance, you're going to want to install the Mosquitto broker. So go to Haas.io, Add-on store, and then find the Mosquitto broker here. You will install this, and then the final step would be to go to configuration, users, and create a new user, name it MQTT admin, and give it a password. It's important for you to remember the username and password, because we will be using that on the firmware side of things. We are here in the Arduino editor. The only library that you need to have installed is this PubSubClient. Make sure you get the one by Nick O'Leary, and that is all that you need to get this code running. Okay, so this code right here is heavily based on the Home Assistant example code for an MQTT Lite. I just tweaked it a bit. to work in my situation here. So I will post a link in the description to where you can download this code. And once you download it, you are going to need to modify a few things. So here you need to type in your Wi-Fi access point name and password. Here you can change this to whatever you want that makes sense to you. You would need to type in here the IP address of your Mosquitto MQTT server. Here you need to type in the user you made in Home Assistant. I called my user MQTT_admin, and then I have a password for it as well. So you need to fill in all that information. Now the last thing you need to, or you can change, is the state topic and the command topic. So like I mentioned a bit earlier, how MQTT works is whoever wants to can publish a message on a topic, and then anybody who wants to can listen to that topic and receive the message. When you click this switch or drag this slider, what is actually happening is Home Assistant is publishing a message on the brightness topic, and it's publishing a message saying set the brightness to this value. So what we're doing on this firmware is we are listening to the brightness, and then we're going to change the pin value depending upon what the brightness was set to. And now, just to complete the loop, Home Assistant could optionally just assume that the brightness is set to whatever you drag the slider to, but a more robust way to implement this is to use what they call the state topic. So you can see here we have two topics. Command, this is where the actual command will come through, and then the state. This is the responsibility of the firmware that we have here to set the value. Once this firmware sets the brightness on the pin, it will then publish its own message here saying, essentially, I have set the brightness to this value, so that Home Assistant gets an affirmative answer to whether or not the command was taken. And then finally, if you connect your transistor to a different pin, this is where you would change that. So I'm not going to go much deeper into this code, but I will basically quickly go over this. So how the PubSubClient works is you subscribe to a topic, and then whenever a message comes in on that topic, this callback function is executed, and that is executed with the topic that you're subscribed to and the payload, which is any data that came along with that message. So what this function does is takes the payload, converts it to an integer, basically make sure it's within the correct bounds. So here we're checking if it's within 0 to 255, and then it writes the brightness using the analog write function to the brightness pin. An analog write is on the NodeMCU implemented as a PWM signal. So that is all you need to do here. Once you've modified this, you can build and upload. When you're doing that, if you're using a NodeMCU, make sure all of your values are the same as I have here, and you also need to make sure you've installed the correct drivers for the NodeMCU, and I can link to those in the description. Okay, the next step is to configure Home Assistant to use the MQTT Lite, and that's pretty simple. Everything needed is here. So we're creating a new light in Home Assistant. It is of type MQTT. We can name it whatever we want. I call mine Grow Light. And now these are the important things. The brightness state topic and the brightness command topic have to match what we have in code. And I was messing with this earlier, but these should be 1. So as long as those match, the brightness should work. And now, like I mentioned earlier, we can't go all the way off. So we need to control the smart outlet. When the user clicks the switch, this topic will be published with an on or an off string. And then the light expects this topic to be published with the status of whether it was just turned on or off. So the final step here will be to use NodeRed to deal with this. So NodeRed is, let me go back. NodeRed can be installed through the House.io add-on store. Where is it? Yes, here. I guess I need to update it, but you just install it. And then once it's installed, you can launch NodeRed. And I personally use NodeRed for all of my automations within Home Assistant. I think it's really easy to use. So this is the automation that listens to the MQTT state and sets the smart outlet. So first we have this node, which is an MQTT node. This listens to growroom, growlight switch, which if you remember in the Home Assistant config is the state or the command topic. So whenever a value comes over there, we look at it, if it's compared to on or off. If it's on, we send it down this pipe. If it's off, we send the command down this pipe. And this is just the call service node, which calls switch turn on the TP-Link smart switch. And this is the same switch turn off on the TP-Link smart switch. So this half of the automation implements listening to a command and setting the switch. And now to complete that, we need to listen to the switch and communicate back to Home Assistant that we have set it. So here we were listening to switch, the same TP-Link switch. Whenever it changes, all we are doing is publishing its state, which is on or off, over MQTT to growroom growlight status. So this is letting Home Assistant know that everything worked successfully. And that is it. Once you do all of that, you should be able to publish your NodeRed automations, and after you edit your config and restart, you should have a new box here which will allow you to drag the brightness and turn it on and off. Alright, that's everything. Thanks a lot for following along. Cheers.